Hi guys, so the chief negotiator of the European Union, Michel Barnier, was speaking in Parliament, the European Parliament, today about the progress of the negotiations, but he also mentioned how he believes an agreement is possible despite the problems surrounding it. Now, I see this as an attempt to give Boris Johnson something to run with. I'll explain what I mean after the video, so let's hear what Michel Barnier had to say first.
Je pense, mesdames et messieurs les députés, malgré les difficultés, qu'un accord est à notre portée. Si nous sommes des deux côtés prêts à travailler constructivement et dans un esprit de compromis, si nous avançons dans les prochains jours sur la base de textes juridiques comme c'est notre souhait, et enfin surtout si nous sommes prêts dans les jours qui viennent à venir aborder et résoudre les sujets les plus difficiles. Le temps est limité, très limité. Il est même limité de plus en plus chaque jour. Et donc voilà pourquoi nous devons trouver, avec les Britanniques, s'ils le veulent, des solutions pour les problèmes les plus difficiles. Je veux rappeler que notre porte reste ouverte et le restera jusqu'au dernier jour utile pour travailler ensemble avec notre équipe, qui est aussi votre équipe de négociation. Nous sommes prêts à travailler de manière très intense, jour et nuit, s'il le faut, pour finaliser un projet d'accord dans un délai qui doit laisser le temps nécessaire à la démocratie, c'est-à-dire à votre Parlement et aussi aux parlements nationaux, ainsi qu'au Conseil, pour s'exprimer.
Okay, so what is he talking about here? Why is the EU coming forward with this statement? This is to give Boris Johnson some breathing space. You know, they're continuing to reiterate the usual talking points of, you know, we're not changing our position. We haven't compromised. We're willing to compromise, but we're not going to compromise on core issues. The talks are still open. We're willing to talk to the UK government, where we want to come to a deal, and we're sure that Boris Johnson and his government want to achieve something as well. Now, it's very important to understand that what's been pronounced to the public is very different to what takes place behind closed doors. Now, you know, for example, trade deals, we don't actually see the details of trade deals in many cases until years after. And for example, Boris Johnson's trade deal with Japan, you know, you get to see some of the core aspects of it, but the details you will not find out until later on. So it's very important to remember that what politicians are telling you in public is generally very different to what you hear behind closed doors. Now, I think what's going to happen is Boris Johnson is playing this game where he's trying to run down the clock. The EU understand this. The EU don't want to push Boris Johnson into a position where he compromises on everything and then he's not able to sell it to the UK Parliament. For example, Michel Barnier said, let me just bring it up where he said, I think it was towards the end. Apologies. Yeah, necessary time left for democracy. This is, I believe, a reference also to Boris Johnson. He's talking to the European Parliament here, but of course this is also for British consumption. The idea that, yes, we need time to implement this, but also the British need to be able to push this agreement through Parliament. Now, Boris Johnson is worried about brexiteers. As soon as they get an understanding of what this deal is about, there's a likelihood that many of them will rebel. Of course, Boris Johnson has an 80-seat majority. There's, you know, if he can keep all of those happy, then it won't be a problem for him. He may need to reach out to the opposition in order to get some support. I don't see that really happening because they would disagree with Boris Johnson's deal. It depends on, of course, on how he sells it. But he's afraid of brexiteers within his party rejecting this deal. The EU are afraid of Boris Johnson not being able to get the deal through Parliament either. So they have to lend some support to Boris Johnson, make it look as if they are compromising, that they are willing to give Boris Johnson something. Of course, we don't know what it is, because the negotiations take place behind closed doors. We may not know for many months what the EU gave to Boris Johnson, what Boris Johnson fully accepted, because it will be put through Parliament as a bill, so you won't know exactly all the details of the negotiations. But I have a feeling what the European Union are doing now is they understand that Boris Johnson needs to get this through Parliament. It's not really a problem for the European Union to get through their parliaments. The big stumbling block is probably the House of Commons. Boris Johnson needs to get this deal through it, and in order to do so, he needs to appear as if he has won some sort of victory. The European Union are willing to allow him to do that because they want to have a deal as well. And I think this is what's taking place probably behind the scenes. For the cameras, it's looking as if, you know, the European Union are playing tough. That's for the European audience, but they're also willing to give Boris Johnson something to say, look, we're interested in maintaining the negotiations. We're willing to talk about what's on the table. Of course, this is to present to Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers, look, we're willing to negotiate. We're willing to compromise. Not on what, but we are willing to compromise. And that perhaps is enough to get Boris Johnson over the finish line. But we will see when the real trouble begins, when Boris Johnson gets a deal back to present to Parliament. I still think that's what he's going to do. That's when the real game will begin, because the easiest part is the negotiating with the European Union, because Boris Johnson can basically just compromise on everything. That's the easy part. The more difficult part would be getting it through Parliament. And they could do, in the same way with the withdrawal agreement, just rush it through without allowing MPs to read it. And then after let the MPs read it, which was mind-blowing, because you had Brexiteers like Ian Duncan-Smith complaining that they didn't read it after the fact that they voted to allow it to be fast-tracked. So if Boris Johnson does something similar, he could get it through Parliament without letting MPs read it, and he may get across the line. But I think it depends on how close we are to the deal being signed and it getting through Parliament. That's the key factor. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you believe about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?